If you don't sign off the house to my parents, the wedding's off, my fiancée said. So I called off the wedding first and walked away with my property, and now she is panicking. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey everyone, I wasn't planning to post this, but what happened deserves its own thread. So, I've 34 male, been grinding in consulting for 10 years. Started with nothing, literally sleeping on my parents' couch, living on peanut butter sandwiches, and cold calling businesses from a thrift store suit. The first year I made $18,000. By year 3, I had my own apartment and a steady stream of clients. Now I run a solid 6-figure consulting business. No partners, no boss, no debt. With that stability, I started investing in real estate. Bought my first house 3 years ago, paid it off fast. Then got a fixer-upper on Maple Street, rented it out, and now pull in passive income while the value climbs. That's where I was when I met Nevada, 32 female, at a networking event. She stood out, smart, independent, had her own career in life. We hit it off fast. 6 months in, we were basically living together. After 2.5 years, I proposed. She was thrilled. We set the wedding for 8 months out, which seemed like plenty of time to do it properly without rushing. Looking back now, that's when the first cracks started showing. But at the time, I thought I'd found my person. Someone who got me, who appreciated what I'd built, who wanted to be a partner instead of a dependent. Man, was I wrong about that. The first red flag should have been when she wanted to open a joint account specifically for wedding expenses. Made sense on paper. Both contribute money, pay vendors from one account, keep everything organized. I figured it was smart financial planning, especially since Nevada worked in marketing and was good with details. I put in $25,000 to start, which was generous but not going to break me. Nevada added $8,000 from her savings. The plan was simple. Venue deposits, catering, photographer, flowers, all the standard wedding stuff would come out of this account. We'd each add more money as needed, but the initial $33,000 should cover most of the big expenses. Here's where it gets interesting. Nevada took the debit card and said she'd handle most of the vendor payments since she was doing the bulk of the planning legwork. Fair enough. I hate dealing with wedding vendors anyway. Rather focus on work and let her manage the details. First month, everything looked normal on the statements. $2,500 to the venue for the deposit, $800 to the photographer, $400 to the florist. Standard stuff that we'd already discussed and agreed on. I barely paid attention to the smaller charges because I trusted her judgment. But then I started noticing weird patterns when I reviewed the monthly statement. There was a $320 charge to someplace called Bella's Boutique that I didn't recognize. When I asked Nevada about it, she said it was for shoes for the wedding. Okay, fine. Brides need special shoes apparently. Next was a $275 charge to a nail salon. I'm starting to think this chick has expensive taste, but I'm not going to be the guy who argues about wedding preparation costs. Most of my married friends told me to just write the checks and stay out of the planning details. Happy wife, happy life, and all that crap. The real wake-up call came when I saw a $1,200 charge to some fancy spa place. That seemed like a lot for whatever brides do at spas, so I asked about it over dinner. Oh, that's for my bachelorette party planning, Nevada said, cutting into her chicken like it was no big deal. Me and the girls are doing a weekend spa retreat instead of the typical Vegas thing. Much classier. I nearly choked on my food. You're paying for your entire bachelorette party out of our wedding account? It's wedding related, she said with this defensive tone. That logic made zero sense to me. The bachelorette party isn't a wedding expense. It's a personal party expense. The breaking point came when I saw multiple hotel charges totaling $2,400. All for the same weekend, our wedding weekend. When I added them up and asked about it, Nevada gave me this look like I was being petty. Those are for my family's hotel rooms, she said. My parents, my sisters, my Aunt Carol, and my cousin Lisa. They're all coming from out of state for the wedding. Nevada, we specifically talked about this. We agreed that families would handle their own travel and accommodation costs. That was before I really thought about it, she said. My family isn't as well off as yours. They shouldn't have to stress about hotel costs during our special weekend. Your parents can afford their own room. Yeah, my parents could afford it because they make smart financial decisions and live within their means. Nevada's parents couldn't afford it because they lease cars they can't pay for and take cruises on credit cards, but apparently pointing that out would make me the bad guy. We only have one wedding in this life, Nevada said when I pushed back. Why not do it right? Why not make sure everyone we love can be there without worrying about money? That phrase, we only have one wedding in this life, became her justification for everything. Upgraded flowers because we only have one wedding. Professional hair and makeup for all four bridesmaids because we only have one wedding. Meanwhile, Nevada hadn't added another penny to the joint account since that initial $8,000. She was spending money like we were millionaires while contributing nothing extra to cover the overages. I was basically funding her entire family's wedding vacation while she acted like it was our shared decision. The joint account balance kept dropping. $28,000, $25,000, $22,000. At this rate, we'd blow through everything before we even got to the big vendors like catering and the band. But every time I brought up the spending, Nevada would get emotional and say I was stressing her out during an already overwhelming time. I know I should have shut it down right then. Should have had a serious conversation about budgets and boundaries. But I kept telling myself it was just wedding stress, that things would go back to normal after we were married. I figured I could absorb the extra costs if it meant avoiding conflict during an already tense time. Biggest mistake I could have made. Because what I thought was just wedding overspending was actually Nevada showing me exactly who she really was. And the real test was still coming. About 6 weeks before the wedding, Nevada and I are having one of our Sunday morning planning sessions. We developed this routine where we'd sit at my kitchen table with coffee and wedding binders, going through vendor confirmations and guest RSVPs. Pretty normal couple stuff, even if these sessions sometimes turned into arguments about her latest expensive ideas. This particular Sunday, everything seemed chill. We just finished updating the final headcount, 147 people, which was about 20 more than we originally planned because Nevada kept adding distant relatives and work friends. I was internally calculating what that would do to our catering costs when she brought up something completely out of left field. I've been thinking about wedding gifts, she said, not looking up from her phone where she was scrolling through some wedding planning app. Not the registry stuff from guests, but what we give to our families. I'm still focused on the guest list math, trying to figure out if we need to rent additional tables. What do you mean? Like thank you gifts for the parents? Sort of, but bigger than that. She set down her phone and got this look on her face like she was about to say something important. Your parents are pretty comfortable financially. They don't really need anything material from us. True enough, my parents are both retired teachers with decent pensions, own their house outright, take nice vacations every year. They're not wealthy, but they're secure and don't want for much. But my parents are in a different situation, Nevada continued. They've been stuck in that same rental apartment for like 15 years. Never been able to save enough for a down payment because rent keeps going up, and they had some credit issues a few years back. This was true too. Nevada's parents live in a decent two-bedroom apartment, but they're basically throwing away $1,400 a month in rent with nothing to show for it. Her dad works at an auto parts store, and her mom does part-time administrative work for a dentist. Nice people, but they make questionable financial choices. Always have car payments, take expensive vacations they can't afford, that kind of stuff. Okay, I said, still not seeing where this was heading. What are you thinking? Nevada leaned forward across the table, getting more animated. What if we gave them something that would actually change their lives? Something meaningful that shows how much we appreciate everything they've done for us? The way she was building up to this was making me nervous. Like what? The house on Maple Street. I literally stopped breathing for a second, just stared at her to see if she was joking. She wasn't. You want me to give your parents my rental property? Think about it logically, she said, like she was presenting a business proposal. You don't even live there. It's just sitting there generating rental income while my parents struggle with rising rent costs. This would solve their housing problem permanently. I put down my coffee cup and really looked at her. Nevada, that house is worth almost $300,000. You're asking me to give your parents a $300,000 wedding gift. She waved her hand dismissively. It's not like you'd be losing $300,000. You'd just be transferring an asset to family. The house would still exist. It would just belong to people who actually need it. The casual way she said it was almost insulting. Like I was being petty for thinking about the financial implications of giving away a house. I bought that property as an investment, I said, trying to stay calm. It generates $1,800 a month in rental income. That's over $20,000 a year. Why would I just give that away? Because we're about to be married, she said, her tone getting sharper. Because marriage means sometimes putting your spouse's family's needs before your own financial interests. Because it would mean everything to me. And what would you be giving my family in return? What's the equivalent gesture from your side? She looked at me like that was the dumbest question she'd ever heard. Your parents don't need anything. They're already comfortable. That's not the point. The point is, you're asking me to make a massive financial sacrifice while offering nothing comparable yourself. I'm offering my love and commitment, she said. I'm offering to build a life with you. Isn't that worth more than some rental income? The manipulation was so transparent it was almost insulting. She was trying to make this about our relationship when it was clearly about money and entitlement. Nevada, I'm not giving your parents my house. The shift in her face was immediate, like a switch flipped. The sweet, calm version of Nevada vanished, replaced by someone harder, colder. That entitled edge crept into her voice as she started talking about my second property like it was just sitting there waiting to be gifted. She didn't even try to sugarcoat it anymore. In her mind, owning two homes meant one was up for grabs, specifically for her parents. There was no recognition of how I'd gotten to this point, no appreciation for the years I'd spent grinding while she was still figuring out her major. Just the assumption that what I had built should now be redistributed to prove my loyalty. When I stood firm, her bitterness bubbled up fast. Suddenly, I was the villain. Selfish. Ungrateful. She acted like I was turning my back on the very people who had supposedly supported us, twisting the situation into some warped morality test. To her, declining to hand over a $300,000 property wasn't about boundaries. It was a personal insult. Then came the manipulation. She stopped pacing, fixed me with a look that was part disappointment, part threat, and said something that made my stomach turn. She threw love on the table like a bargaining chip, like if I didn't go along with this plan, it meant I didn't really love her. And in that moment, I realized exactly who I was engaged to. Someone who measured love by how much I was willing to sacrifice, not by mutual respect or trust. To her, giving away something I'd worked years for wasn't unreasonable. It was expected. Anything less meant I was failing her. The silence that followed was heavy. We just looked at each other across my kitchen table, and I could see her processing the fact that I wasn't going to cave to her demands. Fine, she said finally, grabbing her purse and keys. I'm going to stay with my parents until you set your mind straight about what marriage actually means. She headed for the door, then turned back with this dramatic pause. Call me when you're ready to be a real partner instead of a selfish landlord. The front door slammed behind her, and suddenly my house was quiet again. I sat there for a minute, trying to process what had just happened. My fiancée had just demanded I give her parents a $300,000 house as a wedding gift, then stormed out when I refused. The craziest part? She seemed genuinely shocked that I'd said no, like she'd expected me to just hand over my property without question, like it was a reasonable request instead of completely insane. That's when I started wondering what other expectations she had about my assets after we got married. And that's when I decided I needed to do some investigating. Nevada stayed at her parents' place for 2 days without calling or texting. Honestly, it was the most peaceful my house had felt in months. No wedding planning stress, no arguments about vendor costs, no dramatic sighs when I had to take work calls. Just me, my routine, and some actual quiet time to think. Tuesday morning around 9 a.m., my phone finally rings. Nevada's name pops up and I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. Have you thought about what we discussed? She asks, like she's calling to confirm dinner plans instead of asking about a $300,000 house. Her tone was different, though. Less angry than when she'd stormed out, more like she was talking to a client she was trying to close a deal with. Professional, but with this underlying assumption that I'd obviously come around to her way of thinking. Yeah, I've thought about it, I said. The answer's still no. There was this long pause, and I could practically hear the wheels turning in her head. She'd probably spent the last 2 days with her parents, getting them all excited about the possibility of free homeownership, maybe even planning where they'd put their furniture. Look, I said, trying to keep things civil. I understand you want to help your parents. After we're married, we can talk about ways to assist them financially. Maybe help with a down payment on their own place or… No, she cut me off. That's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for this specific house, for this specific reason, as this specific gesture. Either you understand why this matters to me, or you don't. The way she said it made my stomach drop. This wasn't a negotiation anymore. This was an ultimatum disguised as a conversation. And if I don't? I asked. Another long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was ice cold. Then maybe we need to postpone the wedding until you're ready to be the partner I need you to be. There it was. The threat I'd been waiting for. Give me your house or lose your fiancé. Pretty clear choice, right? Let me think about it, I told her. This is a big decision. Give me a few days to process everything. Her tone immediately brightened, like a salesperson who just got a customer to agree to think about the extended warranty. Really? Oh, Ryan, I knew you'd understand once you really thought about it. This is going to be so amazing. My parents are going to be so grateful, and I'm going to be so proud to have a husband who cares about family the way you do." The confidence in her voice was telling. She wasn't hoping I'd agree. She was expecting it. Like the outcome was already decided, and I just needed time to accept the inevitable. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen for a while, trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. My fiancée had just threatened to postpone our wedding unless I gave her parents my house. That's when I decided to make some phone calls of my own. First call was to my buddy Sebastian, who's been practicing law for about 8 years now. We went to college together, and he's always been straight with me about legal stuff. I explained the whole situation. Fiancée demanding I gift her parents my rental property, threatening to postpone the wedding if I refuse. "Dude," he said immediately, "run. Like, pack your shit and run right now." "It's that bad?" "Ryan, this isn't normal behavior. This is gold digger level manipulation. She's literally holding your wedding hostage to extort property from you." We talked for about an hour about my options and what I needed to protect myself legally. Sebastian explained how marriage affects property ownership, what community property laws look like in our state, and how Nevada might try to claim rights to my assets after we were married. "Here's what you need to do right now," he said. "Document everything. Every conversation, every text message, every demand she makes. If this goes south, you'll need evidence that she was trying to manipulate you. You think I should start recording our phone calls?" "Absolutely. You're allowed to record conversations you're part of. It's not wiretapping if you're one of the participants." That afternoon, I called my financial advisor and my accountant, explained that I was having second thoughts about getting married, and wanted to make sure all my assets were properly protected. Both of them said the same thing Sebastian had: document everything and don't transfer any property before the wedding. My accountant was especially blunt about it. "Ryan, you've worked too hard building wealth to hand it over to someone who sees you as a bank account. This woman is showing you exactly who she is. Believe her." That evening, I started going through my phone, screenshotting all the text conversations Nevada and I had about wedding expenses and her family's financial situation. I also set up a separate bank account and started moving some of my personal savings there, just in case things got messy. The more I thought about it, the more obvious it became that Nevada had been planning this for a while. The timing wasn't random. She'd waited until we were close enough to the wedding that I'd feel pressure to avoid disrupting everything. She'd probably calculated that I'd rather give up the house than deal with the embarrassment and hassle of canceling a wedding. What she didn't realize was that I'd rather deal with some temporary embarrassment than spend the rest of my life married to someone who saw my assets as her family's retirement plan. Thursday morning, I started making some very quiet phone calls to wedding vendors. Didn't cancel anything yet, just asked about their cancellation policies and what kind of deposits I'd lose if we had to call things off. Wanted to know exactly what this decision was going to cost me financially. Turns out most vendors have pretty standard policies. You lose the deposit, but don't owe the full amount if you cancel more than 30 days out. Some places were more flexible than others, but overall it wouldn't be a financial disaster to pull the plug. That's when I realized I'd already made my decision. I was just waiting for Nevada to call back so I could see if she'd double down on her demands or maybe come to her senses. Friday morning, right on schedule, my phone rang. "Good morning, babe," she says, voice all sweet and optimistic. "How are you feeling about everything?" "Still thinking," I told her. "This is a huge decision, Nevada. I want to make sure I'm considering all the angles." "Of course, I totally understand. Take all the time you need." "Well, I mean, we do need to figure this out soon since the wedding's coming up, but I know you'll make the right choice." The confidence in her voice was unreal. Like she'd already mentally moved her parents into my house and was just waiting for me to catch up to her timeline. "Actually, I was wondering about something," I said. "Have you mentioned this idea to your parents yet?" Slight pause. "We've talked about it, yes. I mean, I wanted to see how they felt about the whole thing before bringing it to you." "What did they say?" "They were incredibly touched, Ryan. My mom actually cried when I told her you were considering it. She said she's never met anyone as generous as you." That right there told me everything I needed to know. Nevada hadn't presented this as a possibility or an idea she was exploring. She'd told her parents it was happening, probably got them all excited and grateful, and now she was using their emotions as additional pressure on me. "That's nice," I said. "I'd hate to disappoint them if this doesn't work out." "It's going to work out," she said quickly. "I know you, Ryan. You're a good man who cares about family." After the call, I decided to do some investigating. Something about Nevada's confidence was bugging me. She seemed way too sure that I'd cave, like she had information I didn't know about. First thing I did was check the security system on the rental property. I've got cameras on the front and back doors, plus one overlooking the driveway. Mainly installed them to keep an eye on the tenants and make sure they're not trashing the place or having unauthorized parties. I pulled up the footage from the past week, just routine checking, and that's when I saw something that made my blood boil. Wednesday afternoon, the day after Nevada stormed out of my house, there's her car pulling into the driveway of my rental property. And she's not alone. Two older people get out with her, and I immediately recognize them as her parents. I watched the footage of the three of them walking around my property for almost an hour. Nevada had keys somehow, probably made copies when we'd done a walkthrough together months ago, so she could see the investment side of my portfolio. Her mom was taking pictures with her phone, while her dad was actually measuring rooms with a tape measure. They weren't just looking at the house, they were planning how to use it. At one point, Nevada's pointing to different rooms, and her parents are nodding along, clearly discussing furniture placement or room assignments. Her dad spent like 10 minutes in the garage, probably figuring out storage for his tools and lawn equipment. The whole thing lasted over an hour, and they were clearly treating it like a house they were about to move into, not a property they were hoping to maybe receive someday. But it gets worse. I called the property management company I use for tenant relations and maintenance issues. Asked Sarah, the office manager, if anyone had been asking questions about the Maple Street property lately. Actually, yes, she said. A young woman called last week, asking about getting an appraisal done. Said she was the owner's fiancée, and you'd asked her to handle it for insurance purposes. My stomach dropped. Did she give you a name? Nevada something. She seemed to know details about the property, so I didn't think anything of it. Was I not supposed to help her? Nevada had gotten my rental property appraised behind my back. She'd impersonated my authority to get financial information about an asset I owned without my knowledge or permission. Sarah, I never asked her to do that. Please don't provide any information about my properties to anyone without checking with me directly first. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Should I not have authorized the appraisal? It's fine. Just send me a copy of the report when you get it. The appraisal came back at $285,000, which was actually higher than I'd estimated. So now Nevada knew exactly what she was asking for. Not just a house, but specifically a $285,000 asset that was worth more than most people make in 5 years. That evening, I was still processing all this when my phone buzzed with a text from Nevada. Talked to my parents today. They're so excited about the possibility of finally having their own place. Mom's already planning her garden. She was using her parents' emotions as leverage, making it harder for me to say no without disappointing people who were probably already mentally packing their apartment. But then she sent another text that really showed her true colors. I mean, it's basically our house anyway once we're married, right? Community property and all that. This way my parents get to enjoy it while they're still young enough to really appreciate it. There it was. The real plan. Nevada thought that marrying me would give her legal claim to my assets. She was planning to use that house whether I agreed to gift it or not. The wedding gift angle was just her way of getting it transferred, before I realized what community property laws actually meant. Except she was wrong about the law. I'd checked with Sebastien. Property owned before marriage stays separate, unless it gets commingled or jointly titled. My rental house would remain mine even after we got married, as long as I didn't add her name to the deed. But Nevada didn't know that. She thought she was being clever, getting me to voluntarily hand over something she assumed would become hers anyway. That night, I made my decision. I started making calls, and by Sunday night, I'd quietly canceled about 80% of our wedding arrangements. The only people who knew were the vendors, and I'd asked them all to keep it confidential until I could speak with my fiancé directly. Monday morning, Nevada called for her weekly check-in. Her voice came through bright and chipper. So what's your decision? I've made up my mind, I said, cutting straight to it. The wedding's off. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could literally hear Nevada breathing, while her brain tried to process what I just said. What do you mean the wedding's off? She finally asked, voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. I'm not marrying you. We're done. I didn't expect silence after that. Nevada always had something to say. But what followed wasn't a real conversation. It was just her trying to reverse engineer a future I no longer wanted. She hit every phase of denial like a checklist. First, she said I was just stressed, that the house situation had gotten in my head. Then she offered to forget all of it. Her parents, the appraisal, the entitlement. Said we could start fresh, just the two of us. She didn't get that the damage wasn't just done. It was revealed. When that didn't work, she snapped. Full meltdown. Screamed about how ungrateful I was. How I'd never find anyone who loved me like she did. How this was all a big overreaction. I let her rant. Then, finally, I spoke. You don't love me, Nevada. You love what I could give you. And you got caught counting it early. I could almost hear her scrambling for ground to stand on. She tried to claim she'd just been excited, Said she wanted to show her parents how generous I was going to be, that it wasn't meant to be behind my back, but it was. She got my property appraised. She gave tours like she already owned it. She made calls pretending to be someone she wasn't, and she didn't expect me to have security cameras, or that the management company logs every inquiry. The fake crying started when she realized I wasn't budging. She apologized. Well, she used the word sorry, but only after being cornered, not because she meant it. I thought we were building something real, she said. 3 years down the drain just like that? No, I told her. 3 years showed me who you really are when you think you're above consequences. That was the last real thing I said before ending the call. Told her to come pick up whatever she had left at my place before the week was out. And after that, I didn't want to hear from her again. Then I hung up. And just like that, the future she'd designed without me collapsed. Not with a fight, not with a final plea, just with a click. Within an hour, my phone was blowing up with calls and texts from Nevada, her parents, her sister, even some of her friends. I ignored all of them and started phase 2 of my plan. Called my parents first, then my sister and my close friends. Explained exactly what had happened before Nevada could spin her version. Sent them screenshots of her texts about the house being basically ours anyway, and copies of the unauthorized appraisal request. My mom's reaction was perfect. Oh, honey, you dodged a bullet there. That girl was trouble from the start. You could tell? She had that look in her eyes whenever she talked about your business or your properties, like she was already spending money that wasn't hers. My sister was even more blunt. Thank God you figured this out before the wedding. Can you imagine dealing with her in a divorce? Next, I called Sebastin and had him draft a cease and desist letter. If Nevada was going to try to trash my reputation or spread lies about why the wedding got canceled, I wanted legal protection ready to go. The letter was basically a warning that I had documented evidence of her attempts to manipulate me into transferring property, plus recordings of our conversations about the house demands. If she tried to defame me or claim I'd been abusive or controlling, I'd release everything and let people judge for themselves. Sebastien also helped me change the locks on both my properties and update all my financial accounts to remove Nevada's access. She'd never been officially added to anything, but I wanted to make sure there were no loose ends she could exploit. Tuesday evening, I saw them on the security feed before they even rang the bell, Nevada and her sister Michelle, standing outside my front door like a guilt-tripping welcome wagon. Nevada looked wrecked. I let them stand there a minute before opening the door. She wasted no time. Asked for 5 minutes. Said she just wanted to talk. Her voice cracked at the end, like she'd rehearsed it, but couldn't hold the performance. I told her flat out. There wasn't anything left to talk about. Her actions already said everything. She tried to downplay it all, said she got carried away, blamed wedding stress, said she pushed too hard, that it wasn't worth throwing away everything we'd built. Michelle chimed in, playing the sympathy card. Nevada hadn't stopped crying since the call. She loves you, Ryan. She's sorry. She really is. But remorse after exposure isn't the same as integrity. I reminded them both that being sorry doesn't undo what was done. It doesn't erase who someone shows themselves to be when they think they're untouchable. Nevada's voice cracked again, and this time, I think the tears were real. I was just trying to do something meaningful, she said, voice breaking mid-sentence. For my parents. For us. I thought if we started our marriage with something generous, something amazing, it would bring everyone closer. Right. With my property, my money, my name on the deeds, her parents picking curtains like it was already theirs. She claimed she would have done the same for mine if the roles were reversed. I told her they weren't, and never would be, because she didn't have a six-figure asset to dangle. That generosity had never been the point. Access was. Then, Michelle's tone shifted, sharp and defensive. Said maybe Nevada was better off, that a man who picks money over love wasn't worth marrying to begin with. I didn't say anything. I just stepped inside for a moment and came back with a cardboard box. Everything Nevada had left at my place over the years, and handed it over without a word. She took the box but didn't leave. Just stared at me like she was waiting for some sign I'd changed my mind. Instead, she dropped the last card in her deck. Bitterness. I hope you're happy, she muttered. Hope your precious houses keep you warm at night. They will, I said. Unlike a wife who treats me like a wallet with a heartbeat. She turned and walked off. Michelle trailed behind, glaring like I'd kicked a puppy. I closed the door, locked it, deleted her access from the smart lock. The next morning, I got a call from her parents. I shouldn't have answered, but part of me wanted to know what kind of spin they'd put on all this. Her dad started in immediately. No hello, just irritation. Said I was being ridiculous. That it was just a house I didn't even live in. Asked if I was really that selfish. I kept it calm. explained again that it was my house, bought with my money, and their daughter tried to hand it over without permission, then lied about it. Her mom piped up in the background, said it was all out of love, said they thought I actually cared about Nevada's happiness. I told them I did. That's why I wasn't marrying her. Because someone like Nevada, who needs to control and claim everything around her, wouldn't be happy with someone she couldn't manipulate. That didn't go over well. Her dad snapped, said I'd regret this, told me I'd never find anyone better. Maybe not, I said, but at least I won't have to worry about someone trying to steal what's mine. They hung up, no follow-up, no apology, just a silent confirmation that walking away was the smartest thing I've done in years. Over the next few weeks, Nevada tried a few more approaches. Mutual friends reaching out to mediate, a long email explaining her side of the story, even a LinkedIn message about how we could handle this professionally. I ignored all of it. Sebastian sent the cease and desist letter when she started posting vague stuff on social media about learning who people really are, and gold diggers come in all forms. The letter worked. She went quiet after that. 6 months later, I heard through a mutual friend that Nevada had moved back in with her parents, still living in that same rental apartment, still complaining about not being able to afford to buy a house. Meanwhile, my rental property is still generating $1,800 a month. My business is doing better than ever, and I don't have to worry about someone trying to manipulate me into giving away my life's work.